Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are watching Off the Track, and it is time to drop the hammer.
Well, everyone, we made it to episode number 6, and this is Off the Track. Welcome back to our Dirt Track Racing podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Holmes, and to my left, I have my best friend and co-host, Bennett Gooch. Bennett, how was your weekend?
Pretty phenomenal. First and foremost, I got to say, congratulations. 3 wins in a row and setting a new record, 41 wins at the Red Bluff Outlaws, all divisions combined. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, 41 wins, Red Bluff, which we're going to touch on so much in this podcast and get a unique perspective. But the Red Bluff Outlaws, a place that's near and dear to my heart, the history of it. It's a huge character here on the YouTube channel. We obviously go there every single winter. And to this day, I will say that it has made me the driver that I am today. So to pick up 41 wins between all the classes and I guess now be the new mark at the top of the charts, it's humbling for me. It means so much, and I think it's really just a testament to not just myself as a driver. You know, I'm just a small part of the puzzle, but my family for supporting me. Now the great relationship I have with QRC Karts and Jimmy Elledge, and he's such a big part of my success as well, right there with my dad. So just super cool to be there at the top and have that accomplishment.
Yeah, we also got to turn some laps afterwards. I got to run the cage clone,
yes.
So I got to shake that down.
We practiced on Sunday.
We did practice on Sunday. I got to turn some laps in an open, which by the time this comes out, everyone will get to know I'm running the factory Holmes 18T
hired gun
at Red Bluff. So March 6th, I'll be making my return to the open class in the 4-stroke.
Yes.
And then maybe if we put on a show there and do pretty good, maybe I can,
maybe a seat will stay in. A seat will stay in. So that's going to be super exciting. Bennett's going to get to turn some laps, and that'll all be on his YouTube channel. Also, like you mentioned, we practice. Mm-hmm. I got to turn some laps in a cage clone. Mm-hmm. Mainly we were shooting media stuff, slow-mo. Our guest was there helping with all that. And that's kind of what we're going to jump right into here today. We have a phenomenal guest that's actually going to be here in studio, Kyler Shaw. Kyler Shaw, the owner of Fast 4 Media. You guys are going to get to hear about his story today. And he actually came up from California to Oregon to be here in studio with us, which we're super excited about. I met Kyler probably in 2016, right when I first started vlogging. He actually said something right after I posted my first YouTube video. He said, hey, if you ever want to do any announcing, I don't know if that's what he got out of my first vlog or whatever, but he's like, hey, you can come up to the booth and hang out. So it's going to be great to talk to him here today.
Yeah, I think the first time I met Kyler was probably at Red Bluff right afterwards. Before me and you would go after the main event. We'd go up to his booth, up in the stands, and just get footage for your vlogs and whatnot. But ever since then, we've just known Kyler, and he's super cool. He's got a great story, and I'm excited for everyone to hear about it today.
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of switch up the seating arrangement here. I'm going to move to the middle. Bennett's going to stay in his spot, and Kyler is going to come here on set. But anyway, this is episode number 6 of Off the Track. We're excited to get into it. So joining us here today on episode number 6 of Off the Track in studio, we have the owner and operator of Fast 4 Media, a part-time sprint car driver, a good friend of mine and Bennett's, and also a sponsor on my 2021 sprint car. Kyler Shaw, you're usually behind the camera, and now you're in front of it. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is actually the first time I've been on a podcast, and like you touched on there, I've really never been in front of a camera other than the times that I raced back then, which we'll touch on later in the show. But yeah, usually pointing the camera instead of being in front of them. So it's great to be here.
Absolutely. We're super stoked to have you on and get to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. And that's how we really want to start the show. We did have an action-packed weekend at the Red Bluff Outlaws, which we want to get into. But first off, tell us a little bit about Kyler Shaw and Fast 4 Media.
Yeah, Fast 4 Media is a broadcasting company. We do the Red Bluff Outlaws, Cycleland, a bunch of big micro races back east. Mostly specialize in broadcasting. I also do video projects for customers, if they want that. But mainly in the broadcasting side of things, trying to promote grassroots racing and really give it an outlet to grow.
Yeah, and where are you from?
Fresno, California. So, about 5 hours from Red Bluff. So.
Yeah, about.
A little bit of a tow every single weekend, depending on.
Yeah, actually, back then I used to do the trek every week. Now I stay with Jimmy, or, I have a camper trailer I could stay in at the track. So that's really helped out these years.
Yeah, so getting into now this last weekend at the Red Bluff Outlaws, a normal broadcast, points race number 9, and then also we got the chance to rent the track on Sunday. You rented it for about 12 to 15 drivers to shoot slow-mo videos, have a lot of fun. Talk about, just your weekend and getting to film a little bit about at Red Bluff.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend. Like you touched on, we rented the track, and then obviously Saturday we raced. You got 3 in a row, 41 wins.
Thank you.
quite impressive. I videoed there a lot of years, and obviously we don't really see that every so often. So definitely a cool thing that you did there. Racing was great Saturday. Broadcast went well, and then Sunday we had some fun. We got to run the cage clones, and you got to shake your clone down for the race coming up in March. So yeah,
you actually got behind a wheel of a car too.
Yeah, I did. I got to run the cage clone, like I said, and then the Outlaw cart. I got to run the F4, and that was a thrill for sure.
Absolutely. One question for you there, because I've raced an open and the cage clone, and you've raced the open, and you got to try cage clone actually. What's your opinion on the difference between hopping in a cage clone, because you don't race too often, you kind of just get in the car when you can and whatnot, going from a cage clone with something that's just about 17 horsepower, getting right into like a high 60 to low 70 horsepower open 500 Outlaw car? What was that like for you?
Yeah, the cage clone was fun. Obviously it's got some speed. It was kind of like driving a Cadillac though compared to the Outlaw cart.
Yeah.
The cart is out of control. If you don't know what you're doing, it could end tragic. So had to take it slow at first, but once I kind of got comfortable in the cart, it was actually really fun. I always have fun testing on Sundays at Red Bluff. Obviously, I can't race Saturdays because if I don't film, nobody will.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the cart has a lot of power. Definitely way different than the clone. You could kind of hold it wide open in the clone and just be smooth. The Outlaw cart, I mean, something as little as too much throttle or a twitch in the wheel is enough to knock off a tent.
Yeah, well, you looked pretty good. What would you say, Tanner? You looked good. I think you had one. You maybe got up on the berm a little bit. On
one
the bottom,
time. One time you got into the berm. I think it was entering turns 3, right?
Yeah, I got too low there. Tried to get a little confident down there on the bottom, and maybe get the left front up on the berm like some sprint car guys do, because that's where I came from. So you can't do that in a cart.
You talked a little bit about how you felt out of control or just the power of the 500, and that makes sense. Obviously not having that experience, but like, not just because we're buddies or anything like that. Like, you actually did look really, really good, and almost, had like an A main pace. We didn't have transponders on or anything, but your lap times looked fine. You were hitting, certain lines and hitting everything properly, weren't floating it into the wall or on exit or anything like that. So it was fun to get to watch you there, and hopefully you'll get a chance to get in the cart a little bit more.
Yeah, it'd be fun to maybe get to race, but it's like I said, it's tough too. But yeah, the F4, they said if I junked it, I had to pay for it. So I really had to make sure I didn't stuff it in the wall there. Really had to take it slow, but honestly, that kind of works better because, like you always tell me before the races, slower is faster at Red Bluff.
Oh, 100%.
You can't just go balls to the wall and sail it in there. It doesn't work that way. Maybe at Cycleland, would you say?
Yeah, cycling around the bottom, slower is definitely faster because you have to keep the car under you, a little bit like Red Bluff, because Red Bluff at some point, we're actually going to get into this, talk about Red Bluff and how it's changed over the years. But right now with our current track conditions, the track kind of starts to get a little bit faster throughout the night. But, it has at some point where it does slow down a little bit, and it's, at its slowest point, maybe 9.0s, 9.1s, 9.2s, and you really have to keep the car under you in order to actually be the fastest.
Yeah, Cycleland, I've never ran there actually. I run the test days on Sundays at Red Bluff, but I've never got the chance to run Cycleland, so that would be cool to try someday.
It's definitely more fast paced. On the wall, I guess, when you're running up there, you can really feel the speed. Around the bottom, it actually is way shorter around.
Yeah, Red Bluff is definitely fun to turn laps, but I would like to pound that curve on the fence at Cycleland for sure.
So getting into Red Bluff, and I want to talk with you about how it's changed, because on the podcast, the first 5 episodes, we've mentioned Red Bluff a lot. It's a huge character throughout my YouTube videos. Obviously, we shoot 13 to 15 vlogs there every single year during the winter. Bennett and I, we've mentioned it quite a lot, how prestigious Red Bluff is, the history behind the place, how tough it is to win there, and the competition. And I want the viewers to hear it from someone else, because we always talk about this, but like, really, how prestigious is Red Bluff and the history behind the place, and what's that like, filming there every single week?
Yeah, it's every race there is pretty much a big race. Like last week was points race 9. It doesn't feel like that when you're there. It's you walk in that building and it feels like you're almost at the Chili Bowl maybe.
Yeah.
It's just the smell, everything about
the atmosphere.
Bluff. Yeah, the atmosphere. It's very tense. The drivers know what they have to do to make the show every week. It's really cutthroat. There's just really nothing like it, I think. And over time, it's gotten probably harder and harder. You won 3 in a row, which to some people watching this that may not know who some of those Outlaw Kart guys, it's not easy to win 3 in a row there.
No way.
Some people come to Red Bluff with no experience and they're like, I'm going to make the A, no problem. And then they're in the D main.
Yeah, it's like, what the heck? It's
just because
crazy.
you don't know who they are doesn't mean they're not good.
And not only that, too, I think Tanner could probably agree on this, too, because when I got out of racing, I think it was the year they started to implement the pill draw qualifying.
Yes.
So now I guess luck kind of plays into it, because if you really don't hit the right pill and go out in the correct group, that could really hurt you and put you behind the 8 ball for the whole night.
There's so many factors at Red Bluff, and that's something to touch on, like how things have changed over the years, not only with the racetrack, but also, how legit Red Bluff is now. Like, it's especially crazy this season. We recently had different ownership at the racetrack within the past couple of years, and we've seen some changes at the Red Bluff Outlaws. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, for example, we now have victory lane photos. We have victory lane photos, podium finishers. We have checks. Like Bennett said, the pill draw. That's a big deal because, you go sprint car races. There's some form of way to maybe put you in a qualifying group, where at the Red Bluff Outlaws, from all the years I've ever ran there, minus this year and the last, we literally, based off of where you are in points, is where you go out. So every single week, like, you're pretty much, I'm third in points. I know I'm going to be in the first group, or I know I'm going to be in this group. And so we're starting to see a lot of changes, and I think a lot of them are for the better in legitimizing Red Bluff.
I actually was going to talk about that. Back then, you were talking about the pill draw. That used to not be the case. You used to just, the first point race, I believe you pill drew because there were no points yet.
Yep.
And then after that, if you were the points leader, there was either like a 50% invert or a 25% or something.
Yeah, I think that was every couple races.
They would change and switch off.
Yeah, so if you're the points leader, you pretty much went out first or fourth group at the latest. But now, you could draw the 100 tomorrow or this weekend, and you're the last car out.
Yeah, hopefully you don't jinx us, because it has been good to go. Well, this last weekend, actually, the track stayed gripped up throughout most of the night, or throughout most of the qualifying sessions, I should say, and it really didn't matter, but that definitely plays a big factor with trying to go quick time. A lot of times we've been seeing, the first or second or third group, and then after that, the track gets much slower.
Yeah, the second and third group, I think, has been kind of the more dominant
once
group
it cleans off a little bit.
Yeah, because they run the heat races with the box stocks, and it kind of gets it dirty. So once that dust is cleaned off, that's when it really starts to give some character. Pistol Pete last week, I actually think he went fourth, second to last group. So.
Yeah, he did go out fairly late. In talking about track conditions, as it's changed throughout the night, you've been filming at the Red Bluff Outlaws since 2014, right?
Yeah, from in the crow's nest on the back stretch, actually. It kind of evolved over time, started out in that crow's nest, eventually made my way up to the video platform. I graduated.
Yeah, now you have your own platform up there. You get to set up every single week, and watching from up there, you have a great view of the whole track. How has things really changed since, maybe when you first started as far as the racing wise? I know we always joke maybe it was a little bit more brutal back then, and now how the racing is a little bit more professional and people really see Red Bluff in a different light.
It definitely was. Back then, we saw people just wrecking each other for no reason. We still kind of see that, the bad apples really don't forget their habits. But Red Bluff back then, I feel like was way worse when it came to the dirty driving and stuff. But now it's actually gotten way cleaner. I know some people still say it's bad or worse or whatever, but watching all those races, it's definitely improved. It's not how it was when I first started.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, if you recall this. So I think it was when Ryan first started RFC. There was the big battle between QRC and RFC and the house car drivers every main event. Yeah. I remember that's when the track was dry slick, maybe a little gripped up. You could maybe get away with an 11, but for sure a 33. And I don't know if you remember, but those house carts between QRC and RFC would go at it quite a bit back then too.
We've seen the transition throughout the years of the guys coming through and drivers going out, and now the class that we have that we race against on a weekly basis.
Yeah, exactly. It's the competition's changed over time, track conditions, just everything about Red Bluff's changed. You touched on the track conditions. It's definitely, with the car count we have, it's harder for them to keep moisture in the track. It's just a lot of cars on the track, long day. We really haven't had rain this year either, so when it rains, it helps the track, believe it or not, since it's indoors. But it does help. It gets water on the tires when they come out there. It keeps the moisture in, but we really haven't seen much of that. So there's been a lot of rubber this year, which, I know the drivers probably don't like too much, but there's not much they could do really with how many cars they've had lately. Like back then in 2014, I think we probably had 130 cars a night.
Which was fantastic back then.
That was great. Now we have 200 cars. That's never happened in Red Bluff history.
The material's probably worn out a little bit because it's, it's over time, and it's the same stuff that we share with the horse people and the rodeo people.
Yeah, it's not clay. If you didn't know that sitting at home, it's actually dirt. And the horses use it to do barrel racing and stuff like that. So they have to make sure the dirt is soft enough for their hoofs, and clay is not soft.
Yeah, but one of the cool things about that too is we have such a big car count now, as you guys can agree. And like you were saying, the racing has got a lot more respectable for sure. And that's super cool to see because, with just a huge amount of cars, a big class, and now that we're kind of on the big platform with your Fast 4 Media broadcasting us out to the whole world. Everyone gets to watch
highlights on
we've been cleaning it
Facebook,
up for sure.
Instagram, Twitter, get the chance to post a little bit on YouTube. And that's really where we want to dive into next on your story. So before Fast Four Media was a thing, you were actually a racer yourself. You come from a racing background and a family of racers. Can you tell us a little bit about how that journey got started?
Yeah, I think that's actually what kind of kickstarted this whole Fast Four thing, to be honest, being in the racing. I'll touch on that a little more later. But yeah, my dad, when I was born, was racing 250s out at Lemoore Raceway. At the time, 600s weren't really established yet. 250s were the thing, 2 strokes. So eventually 600s made their way into the sport. And ever since I went to Lemoore and watched my dad, I just kind of had an interest in giving it a shot. Got in a junior sprint at a young age and ran that for a couple of years, went up into restricted, ran non-wing, and then moved from non-wing to sprint cars. And yeah, I kind of sat in sprint cars there for a little bit, and then eventually Fast Four kind of just blew up. Really, it's kind of crazy how it grew over time.
What were some of your local tracks? I know you mentioned Lemoore, but with where you guys were located in the Fresno area, where were you racing at on a weekly basis, and what did that competition really look like?
Primarily, we would race Plaza Park Raceway. It's about 45 minutes from our house. Lemoore Raceway was too. We raced there a lot. Delta Speedway and Dixon were a little further north, so we didn't really hit there much, but those tracks were equally as great. But Plaza Park, the competition there was second to none. Same with Lemoore, because really everybody crossed over and ran the same places. But Plaza Park is more of longer straightaways, tighter corners. It would build a curb on the fence. And back then, we used to have 50 supers on a weekly show.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so micros were really healthy back then. They're still pretty healthy. It's just trying to get everybody to bring their cars out. But yeah, Plaza Park, I raced against, the likes of Facinos, Celsies, Macedos. They've all made names for themselves up in higher forms of racing. So it's kind of cool to race against those people. I wasn't quite as good as they were. So here I am with Fast Four. But yeah, it was still cool to race those guys and kind of learn from the best, really.
So coming up through the micro rank, I got a question for you. So me and Tanner have never had the opportunity to race a micro, and I know we'd love to. We always talk about maybe going back to Millbridge or whatnot. But what's kind of the difference between a micro and an outlaw car? Because you've turned laps in both. Could you maybe tell us a little bit what you think the differences are?
Obviously, the most generic answer you'll hear is the no suspension, which definitely plays a factor. Karts definitely are a little rougher on the body. They bounce around and stuff if you miss your line. Like at Red Bluff, we always talk about after qualifying, if you lift before the corner, you just bounce the whole time.
Yeah, it's nuts.
You have to stay in the throttle through that corner and then lift on the backstretch, or you're going to hop. Well, micros, they really are stable. I would say they're pretty comparable to a sprint car, I would think. They wing into the corner. The suspension carries the car a little bit. So when it's rough, it's not too bad, but it definitely does throw the car around. But a kart, when it's rough, that's
not
a
a
totally
very fun
different
ride.
story.
No, yeah. But that's super unique, and I know me and Tanner would love to get behind the wheel of a micro.
Hopefully.
I do know a guy with one.
Hey, you might have to give us some tips too. So
maybe we'll have to make a trip down there.
Yeah.
So talking about your story, you came through the micro sprints. You obviously raced with a pretty tough class of drivers and a great time to be involved in micros. And then you transitioned to the sprint car scene. You have an older brother, Cohen Shaw. Cohen, a heck of a wheelman on the West Coast and in California. Doesn't he have a driller?
Yeah, you couldn't really ask for a better mentor there. He won a driller in stock non-wing at the Tulsa Shootout, obviously. And he really made a name for himself in the micro stuff, and then we moved up to the sprint cars.
So transitioning from the micros to the sprint cars, what does that look like for the Shaw family? And then also, like you touched on, having your brother right there along with you to kind of hold your hand in a way and show you the ropes.
Yeah, it's really nice to have somebody to help you and get you on the pathway to success. My brother had been running sprint cars years before I even thought about running one. So when I came into it, he kind of was basically my mentor and helped me out with a lot of stuff. And I feel like that definitely helps. If you don't really have the help you need, you don't know what you're doing wrong, you can't really build off of that. So my brother definitely was a really big part of my success in the sprint car.
It definitely makes that transition easier because having someone, whether it's set up, teaching you how to drive. I know for myself, having my crew chief Roger, he really knows setup and whatnot. So it helps the learning curve for me, as we always usually have the setup dialed in and stuff like that. Can you tell us real quickly about where your first sprint car race was at?
My first sprint car race, I believe, was at Placerville. I know Placerville I ran full time for a couple seasons, and Placerville's tough. It builds a curb. It's got that red clay. I know cleaning the cars was never really fun during the week, but that curb was gnarly. If you made the slightest mistake, you were pushing over the cushion, or Sometimes you could slot car around that thing, but it's not very fast. You got to keep the wheels spinning on that curb. But I kind of grew
it's like a love for Placerville or sprint cars.
Yeah, and I really got good at running the bottom because of that place. Really, to run the bottom at Placerville, you have to park it.
Oh, yeah.
It would be like a very narrow patch of moisture down on the bottom. That I was trying to carry the left front on the berm in turn 3 at Red Bluff. That's kind of what you do at Placerville.
Yeah.
You got to keep that right rear in that moisture. Otherwise, it's not wide enough for the car, so your right rear would be out in the slick. But really started at Placerville, then made our way to Watsonville. I ran there quite a few seasons.
So a quick question for you, and I always ask Tanner this, and we all know it's ongoing feud between Tanner and Carly. Who's the better racer, you or your brother?
My brother works on my car, so I don't think I can answer that.
Yeah.
But realistically, my brother, he really got good. I was good at Watsonville, so realistically at Watsonville, I was probably better for a while when I actually was running full time, but Cohen really was better at other tracks. I kind of became a local hero at that one track, and then we
gained a lot of fans.
Yeah, we go to Hanford, and then I'm running dead last in the main or something, or flipping out of the park at Silver Dollar. So I would say he was definitely better. Obviously, he has a driller, and I don't.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
that's pretty established.
I can't say I'm better anyway.
Yeah, still super cool to be able to race with siblings, though, for sure.
Who's better, you or Carly?
I don't know. We'll have to let the viewers answer that one.
I can't answer that.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, Carly helps a lot on my sprint car. Actually, we're in a similar spot, I guess you could say.
Might get beat up later.
But yeah, the biggest thing is I just enjoy racing with Carly, and we obviously have our strong suits. Like at Red Bluff, obviously I have more laps there, and I enjoy getting to compete there in racing. So I guess at Red Bluff, I'm better. Cycling, I mean, you could just toss up at any given night. I guess you could say we're equal, and we'll just see what happens.
Roseburg, maybe she might have an edge lately.
Roseburg, she would tell me that she's the best because she won this last year.
But it is cool because, like you were touching on how my brother was my mentor, or I touched on that. You're kind of Carly's mentor. You're really good at Red Bluff. She really doesn't have a better teacher when it comes to Red Bluff. Than having you.
100%. Yeah, it's cool to get to help her out, and I try to teach her everything I know. I mean, that place is really simple in a way once you look at it and you figure things out. A lot of people just overthink it and overcomplicate it and overdrive. So thank you for bringing that up. After your first sprint car race, you get started. You talked a little bit about your Watsonville success, but what are some of the series in places you ran at besides like Watsonville and Placerville?
Occasionally I would run like Civil War series back then. That was a really big thing.
That was pretty big back then, right?
Yeah, that was before Sprint Car Challenge Tour. They would usually get 40 cars, I would say, on a weekly race for the Civil War series.
Yeah.
So back then that was definitely the superior series. You had Sean Becker, Forsberg, they were definitely the guys to beat. They're the legends of sprint car racing. So
on the West Coast for sure.
Yeah. Other than that, I didn't run Civil War too much. I would just kind of hit shows. Like if they go to Watsonville, obviously I'm the local hero there. I gotta defend my turf. But I would run Silver Dollar whenever we could. That's a really long trek for us, but sometimes it was worth it. 2-day shows, you can't go wrong there. But other than that, we really didn't run anywhere other than Placerville and Watsonville full time.
So you've ran a good amount in the micros, the sprint car. You've turned laps in outlaw cart, and I gotta ask, what's your favorite out of the three?
It's tough. They're all really fun. Obviously, I'll run a flat cart with a clone on the side, and have a blast. But the sprint car was really fun. The micro was really fun. I ran those a lot though, so I kind of grew comfortable in them. And the cart to me is probably the funnest because it's mysterious to me. Like I don't really, I'm still learning.
It's a new challenge.
Yeah. Like I wasn't the best micro or sprint car driver, but like the cart is just something completely out of my comfort zone. There's no suspension. The cage moves. Like it's all just trippy at first, but the more I've ran it, I've got more comfortable. Racing's like riding a bike. You have it once you acquire it. And then, so, the cart, you just got to be smart, not plug it in the fence. And realistically, you'll learn over time.
Speaking of being uncomfortable, one of the things, actually, I when I hear Kyler Shaw as a sprint car driver, I think of you more as a non-wing guy. And that's definitely something that is out of your comfort zone. I know a wing, it's like a pillow on top. We always talk about, there's a little safety in that. But talk about, racing non-wing at an early point in your sprint car career. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you like non-wing more than wing.
Yeah, I do. I ran wing way more than I ran non-wing. I think my success in non-wing is why I like it more. And it's also tougher. The wing car is a lot about wing speed, keeping momentum up, and, really nailing the setup. But the the interesting thing too is with a wing, you could roll it back, you know, if your car starts to fade away toward the end, but non-wing, you either have to change as a driver or you're just screwed.
Yeah.
I actually only have maybe 10 non-wing starts, and I had pretty decent success in it. I mostly ran with the 410s with a 360, so I was down on power. But that was probably for my own safety.
That's an uphill battle.
If I ran a 410, I'd probably fly out of the mud. But yeah, I've never actually ran a 410 in general, even in a wing car. But non-wing definitely had success there. It hurts when you flip. I will say
I bet.
that pillow on the wing definitely makes a difference. I didn't really flip very big in the non-wing car, but I landed on the cage and it rung my bell. But I definitely enjoy it more. It's just a shame there's not really places to run it. There's the USAC West Coast 360s, but it's a traveling series if you don't really want to leave home. With my schedule, it's kind of tough to want to go travel now. Maybe 5 races a year under my belt. So it's tough to go do that. So typically we'll just go run Watsonville and put the wing back on.
So now that the viewers know a little bit about your sprint car career, let's talk about some of your success, and specifically at Watsonville, the Ocean Speedway. You mentioned it earlier. That was one of your best racetracks. Can you kind of touch on why that was one of your best racetracks and some of your highlight moments?
Success. I don't know if I had much of that, but Watsonville, I was actually the dash man there for a little bit. I never won a race, which is unfortunate, but it's really hard to win a sprint car race, especially
absolutely.
When I was running Watsonville, Justin Sanders and Shane Golobic were actually weekly competition there. And I mean, they've grown to be some of the best drivers, alive right now. So,
what years were that? What years were you competing there mainly?
I want to say probably 2015, 2016 when I first started videoing, but then over time, Fast 4 grew to the point where I couldn't race, professionally, if you want to call it that anymore. But at Watsonville, they used to call me the dash man. I won 3 dashes in a row. Luck of the draw. I drew the 2, and you know about that.
Yeah.
If you have the outside front row, you're guaranteed to lead into turn 1, especially at a place like that where the corners are so tight. Usually it's pretty narrow, like in the dash, so the momentum always wins there. And I always joke that there was a couple dashes Justin Sanders ran second to me. I think he did it on purpose so he would have lane choice for the feature. He's like, screw this dash. I want to win the race.
But you were just pumped about winning the dash.
I was like, dude, I won the dash 6 laps, man. I'm a hero. No, not really. But they call me the dash man because I won those dashes. They actually called me that after the 3rd dash. And then the 4th dash, I finally screwed up my pill draw. I drew like a 7. I was just riding around in the back. I biked up and flipped. So went out with a bang. I think they jinxed me because they called me dash man. Like, it's just convenient timing for that to happen. But yeah, Watsonville, I was pretty successful there, I would say. I had a 2nd place finish there by virtue of a wreck, but I was in position to win that. So in order to win a race, you got to put yourself in position, and if you're lucky and,
Isn't that where the top 2 got together?
Yeah, and Justin and Shane were actually racing. They had a little bit of a rivalry at that time, and I was like running 3rd, like a half a track behind. And all of a sudden, like I go into turn 1 and they're both off the track and I'm like, no way. Like there was 1 lap to go. I'm like, dude, don't throw the yellow. I'm about to win my first sprint car race. They threw the yellow. Justin kept his engine running, but Shane
He was
stalled.
out there doing like what? Brody's out?
Yeah. Shane stalled his engine, so obviously he had to go to the back. Justin kept his running. He got his spot back, literally left me in 1 lap. But that was probably the closest I ever got to winning at Watsonville, but it's really tough. So I other than those dashes, really nothing to talk about with success.
Another story I've heard you tell before, you took the back row challenge one time. That's something you offer at the Red Bluff Outlaws now, which kind of adds some, makes it more interesting there on a weekly basis. Can you tell about the one time when you took the back row challenge at the Ocean Speedway?
Yeah, I actually kind of forgot about that. I was sick of losing from the front row. There's no worse feeling. You could probably agree. Maybe you could agree.
Yeah,
if you start on the pole and finish 7th, it sucks. Like
if you run 2nd from the pole, it sucks.
Well, I wouldn't know.
I think me and Tanner can both agree on this because I think there's a wall there in 250s. Me and Tanner were like, we kind of prefer to start maybe 2nd row.
Yeah.
Or maybe 3rd row, just because when you're on the front row, you have expectation you're already
you gotta
winning,
get out
you can't
front.
lose.
You got to get out front and set the pace,
Right.
and you got to show everyone, where the fast line is versus when you're, 2nd or 2nd row, 3rd row, 4th row, you can see what the leaders are doing and kind of change up what you're doing and find something because you can search. When you're leading, it's kind of hard to search because you're just on such a rampage to get as far out front as possible.
It's kind of funny, just like on iRacing, I hate being first. Like I'd rather be 2nd or 4th or 3rd. Yeah, I hate it.
Anyway, I was sick of losing from the front row, so I decided they had that back row challenge, I think, the whole time. But I was like, this is my best chance to win. And then, they crushed my confidence by losing all those races. So I was like, screw it, we're going to the back.
Yeah.
And that was actually probably the one time I had a car that was capable of winning. Imagine that. I went from I I think there was only 18 cars, so that's why I kind of took it. It's not a full field, so that helps.
Helps for sure. Yeah.
So I was charging. I found the rubber. I went from like 18th to 4th, and then unfortunately someone got in the back of me and turned me, and that ended that. And it was my friend too, so I couldn't be mad at him.
Yeah.
It was just like whatever, it is what it is. But that was a pretty fun deal, and honestly, that probably kind of kickstarted the back row challenge at Red Bluff. I think it's something the fans really can enjoy. If the racing gets kind of strung out, look back and watch where that dude's going and see how much progress he's made.
And that's really kind of put a prestigious level to Red Bluff, just to prove that everyone that's taken the front row and gone to the back still hasn't even gone closest. Well, I think Trace got up to 3rd, but then due to some technical issues, the second place car got disqualified and he got 2nd. But other than that, that's how difficult Red Bluff is. Like, we've been watching so many great drivers like Casey McLean, Ryan Foster, like phenomenal drivers take the back row challenge, and they just come up short. And that's just how difficult Red Bluff really is.
And if you're watching at home and you don't know about the back row challenge, it actually pays $7,000 to go from last to first at Red Bluffs, plus whatever it pays to win now. Which so
I think it's like 7,500
for a weekly show. So if you go to the back and win the Vern Wheeler Memorial this weekend,
it's 9,100.
Yeah, that's a lot of money at the Red Bluff Outlaws.
That's a lot of money for a go-kart race. You can go and buy a brand new, complete, almost ready to rip go-kart, for that price.
You could junk your car after doing donuts or something and go buy a new one. But the back row challenge is definitely something that I am proud of. It's all my money, so hopefully no one does win it, but I won't complain if someone does. I really want a spectacle for the fans. If you happen to be there that night, witness that, you just witnessed something incredible.
That's super cool to watch for sure, and thank you for putting up that money.
Yes.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's been a good deal for me. I get all that advertising out of it. The back row challenge has been here for 3 years or something now, so all those years, it's the Fast 4 Media back row challenge, and no one's won it, so it's like free advertising basically until someone does win it. But it's totally possible.
Yeah, that's a great segue actually into what we want to talk about next with you. We talked about your sprint car racing and how you got started, but what about Fast 4? How did Fast 4 Media kind of come to be, and when that all got started so many years ago?
Yeah, so Red Bluff has kind of been my baby, I like to call it. Obviously it's not, but when I was first kind of testing the waters with video, I started in photography in 2013. It wasn't really profitable. I needed to do something to make money. Honestly, the way it came about, I really wasn't doing it for money, and it just kind of worked that way. I was doing the photography. I gave up on that in 2015, and I had a bunch of friends like Logan Seavey, James Edens. I was friends with those guys at the time, and they were on this thing called TeamSpeak, so we would always talk on there, but I never actually met them face-to-face. It's kind of like Discord, if you've never heard of TeamSpeak. But they convinced me to come to Red Bluff one time. I believe Caleb Henry met me in Sacramento, and I rode the rest of the way with him. He took me to Red Bluff, and I checked it out, and I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, I've got to come video here more often. And plus, my friends were already there, so that always helps, when you have friends.
And Red Bluff had zero coverage at the time. Like, if you were just a guy, if I was posting my vlogs in 2014, like, that would have maybe been some of the only video. People wouldn't even, record with their cell phone and post. Like, it was crazy the amount of coverage Red Bluff didn't have.
Well, and some of those videos from back then, when I first started in video, I filmed in the crow's nest on the backstretch. Like, not the best videoing because that was my first time. So it honestly looked like some mom in the grandstands, with her phone or something.
With a little bit better camera.
Yeah. It was actually a really good camera. It's the one I did the slow-mo with on Sunday. But it was not very professional, but it got a ton of views because people were like, what is this? Like, I've never seen this before. It's kind of like if you're like on YouTube just browsing and you see like Rally Cross, you're like, wow, that is insane.
Yeah.
Like these people saw Red Bluff and they're wheeling, they're dooring each other, but they don't wreck.
It was brutal back then.
Yeah, like back then people were dooring each other and they wouldn't wreck. Obviously there would be some wrecks if you get hooked up just right, but if you hit someone in the Nerf bar, you could knock them out of the way and just keep on going.
Yeah.
So when you first started filming at the Red Bluff Outlaws, you actually weren't going live. You were on the back straightaway there just shooting highlight clips. How did that transition from that to actually doing live streaming and now closer to your current setup you have today?
Yeah, so like I talked about, my friends convinced me to go video Red Bluff. I was just going up there to film. Broadcasting, actually, the way it came up was interesting. I never even thought about it. It was just one of those things that kind of popped up because of my friends, and now here we are. But getting to that, I did the filming on the backstretch, and people were like, man, this is cool. We need to somehow like get this out even further. if people could watch the race live, which at the time live broadcasting was still kind of new to
yes,
people.
very new.
Like even me running at Watsonville, we had a video guy, but there was no live coverage because it was really hard to do at the time. Cell service was spotty, especially at Watsonville. It's basically in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had friends talk to me after the race, and they're like, dude, this is sick. You actually need to figure out how to try and broadcast this and make it free so people can, check it out, maybe come watch, buy a cart, whatever. So I was like, man, I need to buy a tripod, a nice camera to actually take up there. And so I did that. And for a couple races, I was trying to brainstorm how I would make it all happen. So I was just shooting more tape delayed footage. But then I had the bright idea of let's do West Coast Nationals live. One of the bigger races.
At the time, probably the biggest race in outlaw carts.
Yeah.
My first ever broadcast, West Coast Nationals. I think you asked that earlier. I just remembered. It was West Coast Nationals. I went on a website. They were like, here's a streaming platform. I didn't really research too much of it at the time. I was still kind of computer illiterate. Over time, the more I've done this.
Gain knowledge.
I've got a lot of knowledge now. But I was like, perfect. Like turnkey solution, let's do this. I broadcasted West Coast Nationals. It was free. I may have had to pay a couple bucks, but it wasn't much. I did the broadcast. I was like, awesome. Everything went great. I think we had like 500 viewers at one point, which is really good, considering that was the first broadcast. But then I get an email and it said, West Coast Nationals is an all-day thing.
Yes.
And I believe that was the first year they added the third day. So that was a lot of streaming hours. So the platform I used had this thing called streaming hours per viewer or something like that. So one person watching for 1 hour was one streaming hour. Mm-hmm. Well, their limit was like 800 streaming hours. Well, I had 500 people watching.
Yeah.
It went way over, and they were trying to charge me a ton of money, and it just kind of disappeared. Like, I don't know if the company went out of business or what, but I looked out there, already started out on the wrong foot. Yeah. I was pumped that we got it broadcasted, but then I was like, dude, I do not have the money to pay for this. I want to say it was like $8,000 or something.
That's nuts.
Like, dude, I'm a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
Fresh out of high school, just trying to film.
Yeah, I'm just doing what my friends were asking me to do, and I kind of got screwed there, but it just went away. They never contacted me again about it, so I got kind of lucky there, and then I was like, all right, we need to figure out how to do this without issues like this coming
absolutely.
up.
So when you mentioned that, what are some of your other like trials that you went through, starting video? You said you had to learn everything. I mean, this stuff is not easy. All these cameras, learning that settings, also hooking that up to go live so people can watch and not have any issues. What were some of your trials and tribulations you went through when you started? Yeah,
like I touched on, broadcasting was way harder back then. I feel like now you could buy, so like I do Cycleland, there's actually this box, probably this big, you just plug it into the camera and boom, you're good.
Yeah.
My setup's a little more complicated than that still, but
to do overlays and all that.
Yeah, because the box is just a clean feed. You can't put graphics, no videos, nothing. So it's kind of boring. But back then it was harder. There wasn't all these companies established yet. There really wasn't a market for it yet. Like people were just kind of like, man, this is cool, but like whatever.
Yeah.
But then it grew over time. So I actually had really complicated equipment. It was like this box this big. It was a big heavy case. It had like a computer, like a computer tower. And then it had this switcher, and it was in a foam padded box. But that box was so heavy. Like you literally carry that up the stairs at Red Bluff like you need a nap. Like it was so heavy. I'm glad I finally got away from that thing. It was a pain. But the trials and tribulations with that, there's so many pieces of equipment, something's bound to go wrong. And at the time, technology's gotten better. There's not really that human error anymore in technology with cameras and stuff. But like at the time, I would have a cable go bad. Like, what are the odds? On race day,
got to go to Best Buy and get it fixed.
Well, which at the time, Best Buy really didn't carry that stuff because they're like, what's broadcasting? Like,
yeah.
I would go there and I'd be like, hey, I need an XLR cable. What is that? That's literally this cable right here. But some trials and tribulations. Back then, internet wasn't as good either. So I would actually like stream at Red Bluff and internet would drop. There was actually a time where the power went out. And I
remember that. And that was during an open race too.
Yeah. And they had to bring in a generator, I believe, or the power just came back on.
Yeah.
But that kind of led the way to me getting a UPS backup battery.
Yeah.
So when the power goes out, it still runs for about 5 minutes because it's on battery. So it gives me enough time to like, hey, the stream's going to go down, don't freak out. We'll be back. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's just little things like that was always in the back of my head. Like I would show up on race day nervous, probably as nervous as you to race.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh great, what's going to go wrong today? But then over time things got easier and easier. And now, 9-point races at Red Bluff. Hopefully I don't jinx it. There hasn't been a single issue. The burst race, I had a couple things to iron out. I think it was just computer error. Then they did a Windows update and it never happened again. So that may not even been my fault, but still, when something goes wrong, it's on me. I have to refund the customers.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what happened. It's if the stream doesn't finish, it's on me.
Yeah.
100%.
And that actually leads to me talking about the Outlaw Kart Showcase. So 2015.
First ever Outlaw Kart Showcase.
First ever Outlaw Kart Showcase. Kyle Larson obviously is there. It was a big deal. They selected me to be the broadcasting provider because I did Cycleland. So they were like, why go for someone else? You're the guy. You do Cycleland. We feel like we owe it to you, I guess. And so I did it. We made it through most of the night, but I was so nervous about internet that I actually had an internet company come and install a dish up there on the roof. So that way internet was not an issue, because with that many people, the more people on the property, the more bandwidth gets used.
Yeah.
So I had internet installed. There was an ungrounded power outlet that they plugged into.
No.
The power grid was so overloaded during like the F main or something. The power surged. I didn't have a surge protector at the time, or it was very poor and it didn't work. That ungrounded outlet shot electricity through all my equipment, fried everything. My computer caught on fire, actually. And
No
I was
way.
just like, unbelievable. Like the biggest race, probably, well, at the time,
Ever,
definitely
yeah.
my biggest
He's
race.
going to pay. Yeah. Like the amount of people that were there was
It was
insane.
200 opens.
Yeah.
200.
Just in the open class.
Red Bluff, there's 200 cars total.
Yeah.
So that speaks volume of how big the first showcase was, and I messed it up.
You had NASCAR drivers there, sprint car drivers, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, and honestly, that was almost the end. Like, I was like, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? But, you just can't quit. And now there was a point in broadcasting where I was like, man, I wish I could just go one night without an issue. And here we are, 9 races without an issue. And I kind of overlooked that. But looking back on it now, it was like, man, there was actually like a really rough time in my career of broadcasting that it was like I almost just stopped.
Yeah.
Thank goodness you didn't. And one thing too that we need to mention here, because I think we owe it to you, are the only one. You're the owner, the operator, everything. You did it all yourself. All that equipment. I remember at a young age watching you park your truck and bring all that equipment in to load it up at the early stages of Fast Four Media at Red Bluff.
Oh, Red Bluff.
Yeah, Red Bluff. And I was like, that's a lot, and it's thanks all to you. So thank you for continuing to do all that for sure.
And can you touch on that a little bit? Like, what's a race weekend look like for you? Particularly, you could talk about the Red Bluff Outlaws. I know every track's different, but that's one place where you go to over and over again. Since Bennett mentioned, you are the guy. You're the Fast Four Media. You're not just hired by someone up top to do it. You do everything. So can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how you function throughout the day?
Yeah, there's multiple things to touch on here. First of all, I'm 24 years old. I'm pretty young. Kind of old, but not too old.
Yeah.
Most of these tracks I go to, they're actually like, are you the video guy they hired? And I'm like, no, I'm the guy that owns this.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, you look like you're 12. Like,
Yeah.
if I shave, I look like I'm 12.
Yeah.
So definitely that, I owe that to my dad. Generations of owning a business, definitely it runs genetically, I feel like, or, you're just taught it.
Yeah.
But my grandpa owned a steel building company. They built steel buildings. There's actually a lot of buildings in the Central Valley that are from my grandpa. So, that entrepreneurial mindset has always been, in our family. So my dad was a really good teacher, and then I got that from him. The never quit attitude, when things are going tough, steel buildings, sometimes people just don't want them.
Mm-hmm.
So, things get hairy sometimes, but on to the next thing. I am the one-man show. So when I show up to Cycleland, like, I don't have help. You know about that ladder.
Yep.
That ladder is sketchy.
It's not good.
And there's really no good way to get the equipment up there. I have to carry one hand and climb the ladder with the other. Like, one day you may see me fall off that ladder.
Cycland's a tall scoring tower for sure, too.
Yeah, it's 2 cargo trains stacked on each other. So if you know the dimensions of a cargo train, just imagine 2 of them stacked on each other. There's a ladder that goes up the side, and that ladder starts flexing like a top fuel dragster when you're about halfway up it. And I know some people that are actually too scared to climb the ladder with nothing in their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you carry all your equipment up there. You do similar thing for Red Bluff, just to the top of the stands, and that's kind of how you get your day started.
Yeah, and actually Red Bluff is one of the easier setups since we have since I film the whole season there, I just leave a lot of the cables there. They run outside the booth. They're just zip tied to the bleachers. So that really helps. That's less setting up I have to do by a mile. The cables is the hardest part, I would say, just because, it's so time consuming.
Yeah.
So when that's done, it's really easy from there. I just carry all the equipment up. It's all in smaller boxes, so it's not too heavy. Sometimes I'll even just be like, hey, can you help me real quick? I don't even know who he is, but I'll, ask for some help. But I get all the equipment up there, set up the tripod, set up the broadcasting unit, get it all turned on, make sure everything's working. Once that's done, so at Red Bluff, I wake up at 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
We don't start till noon, so that gives me 4 hours.
So you're setting up at 8 and I'm still asleep at home.
Yeah. Your car might still be dirty. Like you're barely washing it in the morning.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm all prepared and set up. But I get up at 8 in the morning. I don't have to, but I just really want to be prepared, nothing go wrong. Usually by 9 o'clock, everything's set up, ready to go. And then I'll go in the pits, take pictures. If you follow Fast Forward, you see the pictures on social media. Yeah. I take those. I work the technical support. If you've ever watched a stream and had an issue, you're texting me.
Quick mention, I was stoked when you took a picture of me in the opens for the Fast Forward page.
Yeah, that's actually kind of became like something every open driver. They want to be the cover of Fast Forward for that points race.
Yeah, and I try not to put the same driver on there twice, but sometimes I'll have someone be like, hey, dude, put me on the Instagram. I need some clout.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't. I already posted you. But, I run the tech support. I do social media. I'm the camera guy. And then I also run the streams. So like the graphics that are on there, I do that.
The instant replays.
Yeah, the replays. It's kind of a ghetto way to do it, but it works. Mm-hmm. If you're watching the broadcasts, it looks very professional. I welcome you to come stand next to me and see that it's not. But that's just, lots of setting up during the week, just like your race car,
Yeah.
Broadcasting, it's a lot about sitting at home, making sure everything is ready to go. And with the wide view too.
Yeah, the wide view is
a
awesome.
new thing that I had to actually
Can you tell all the viewers that don't know, that maybe haven't seen the stream, what's the wide view?
Yeah, so the wide view is all these years, like when you watch any broadcast, it's just mainly the one camera, or they have multiple cameras that they switch to.
Yep.
Well, I am more of a grassroots level. So when you watch like the World of Outlaws, you want to watch Donnie Schatz, you want to watch Brad Sweet. You don't really care about the people at the back.
Right.
But I have grandparents, parents that watch my stream. They want to see their kid if they're not in the camera view. Mm-hmm. So the wide view was kind of an idea I brainstormed this last year. I was like, if I can somehow put my camera on there and also have a wide view that shows the whole track, nobody can complain.
Yep.
Like, what can you complain about if I show you the whole track? Mm-hmm. It's no different than being there, except you're nice and warm or cold if it's summertime in your house. So the wide view shows the whole track down at the bottom of the screen. If you've never watched a Fast Four stream, you could see anybody on the track, no matter what I'm watching on the camera. And there's also a scoring ticker on the left side. So you can see positions, lap times, or the gap.
If some dude wrecks in 14th place, we know what happens. Or if there's a battle usually you're watching the battle for the transfer spots, but things like that, if you're not videoing, we still at least get to know what happens versus maybe 2 years ago, some dude could have literally flipped and hit the ceiling and we would not have known if you wouldn't have had it on camera.
So that was part of that. I don't want to miss anything. So the wide view was meant to basically let you watch anybody on the track. Or if you're more about the professional broadcast look, you can look at my camera and what I follow. Mm-hmm. Just follow the race along. So it's really working for the best of both worlds here to give you either, watch what I watch or watch your kid. Mm-hmm. And that's just the evolution of, Fast Forward. I listen to the customers. If you tell me to put what classes on the track, I actually just started doing that. I got a couple texts from people. Hey, we don't know what classes these are. Mm-hmm. We're just wanting to watch our kid. Can you please put the class on there? And I'm like, yeah. So the next week, I put the class on there. If you watch the replay from this last weekend, it'll say beginner box heat races or box stock heat races, something like that.
So keep texting the Shaw support line.
Yeah, if it's reasonable. Like there's some things I can't do. The wide view, that was actually kind of a struggle. Yeah. Like Cycleland is a little too big, so if I angle it toward one side of the track, you really can't see the other. Mm-hmm. So if I put it towards turns 3 and 4, you really can't see 1 and 2, but you can see the straightaways. So it's not perfect, but I definitely want to give people an option.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
So as we get towards the end of wrapping up this podcast, I got an important question for you, Kyler. Who is someone that has really been influential in helping build the Fast Four Media brand?
There's a lot of people, probably more than I can remember or name, but a obviously the promoters have really gave me a place to broadcast, and I really appreciate that. But one name that really sticks out that's been with me since day one is Jimmy Elledge. He's let me slept on his couch since day one. He saw me struggling, so he lent his hand out to me to give me some advice. And he's the owner of QRC Carts, and they're pretty successful. So his business owner mindset really helped me when things were tough or if I just needed advice. And he's a really great friend. You're a car owner, like I said, and Jimmy is probably the guy that's been there for me ever since the start and continues to be there for me.
That's great to hear, and I would agree with you 100%. I mean, when you first started broadcasting and going live at Red Bluff, Jimmy was the first guy to obviously hop on board because Red Bluff needed that coverage and needed to have someone there every week to, give everyone the show that we put on. And like you mentioned, I'm super close with Jimmy as well, and just super thankful for what he does for Outlaw Carts because he puts so many people before himself. And giving us all such great opportunities. Another thing to mention is now that you've gotten a lot of support from everyone else and Fast 4 Media is growing, it's becoming bigger and bigger, you are now starting to support drivers. I got a list here. We have Carson Perkins at the Red Bluff Outlaws, Carson Souza as well, Joe B. Miller,
and then right here.
Joe B. Miller's t-shirt, and then you're also on the 18T Sprint car. What's behind now supporting drivers and having your logo on someone else's car?
Yeah, over time, it's. In the beginning, I really didn't have anybody running my logo, so I was just kind of videoing without purpose. But I wanted to get out and help some people, and also in the process, get my logo on some cars. Having it on Carson Perkins at the Red Bluff Outlaws. Unfortunately, he's your rival.
Yeah, right now we're battling
for the points lead. But either way, no matter who wins here in this championship, it's great for me because I support you as well. So. It's just great to see the logo running around the track. I'm sure it might be helping put my name out there. There's no real way to know, but I just like to really support some of these drivers, and also it gives me someone to cheer for.
And not even talking about Outlaw Carts, I know when you travel to the Midwest, like just as much as you stay at you mentioned Jimmy's house, like when you go back there, you're a driver, Joe B. Miller, you stay at his shop, you get to hang out with those guys and form that relationship.
Yeah, Joe B's a really good guy, and he's one of the most prolific drivers in the micro community. You don't see him wrecking people. He's really clean. He's also really good. So that's definitely somebody I wanted to partner with. I know he, won't represent me wrong. And same with you, Perkins, Souza. You guys all represent the company very well. I don't want somebody representing the company that's going to do things that are malicious.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. What's next for Fast 4 Media in 2021, and what's your schedule look a little bit like?
Schedule's about the same as always. I do the micro races back east. I'm trying to get Cycling covered to do 2 races in one night, but also just get the coverage for Outlaw Cars.
What are some of your big micro races?
The High Banks Hustle. That one is really well known, and it's really grown prestige more and more every year. The Non-Wing World Championship, it just started up a couple years ago. I believe this is the 4th annual one coming up. That one's really gotten prestigious over time. They get over 100 cars, just like the Hustle. And it's non-wing. I love non-wing. So the Terry Sprague Memorial, that's another one. That's the same track as the High Banks Hustle, but it is non-wing. So that one's a good one as well. California Speed Week, that's a really great event. West Coast Nationals, the Outlaw Kart Showcase. Just there's so many events that I'm probably forgetting, but those are some of the top ones.
That's great to hear. Real quick, before we wrap it up and talk a little bit more about yourself and where everyone can find you, Bennett, do you want to hit us with a fan question?
Yeah, so today's fan question is a pretty good one, and it comes from Thomas _5.56. And he asks, what's been your worst crash? And to add on to this, I want to add what has been kind of a crash that you look back on, you're like, this was dumb, this was silly, I shouldn't have even done that. So we'll let Kyler go ahead and start with this.
We'll go right to left here.
Well, there was a crash that really rung my bell. It was at Watsonville, and there's a story behind this. I'll try to keep it short, but my brother was out there qualifying, and I was sitting in staging, and my brother had flipped right before I was about to qualify, and I didn't really know it was him until later. Well, John Golovic walked up to me, and we bumped knuckles or whatever, and I turned my head, and he noticed that I didn't have my hybrid on, which is a neck restraint. So my head was basically not restrained at all.
No.
So yeah, imagine what's going to happen next. So I was sitting in staging, and he's like, you don't wear your hybrid? And I'm like, no, it's just qualifying. Like, what's going to go wrong? I'm by myself. Well, I ate those words.
Yeah.
Pushed me out for qualifying after I found out my brother flipped, whatever. I thought maybe he just made a mistake. Well, it turns out we had some parts that were faulty, and it was actually in the drag link, which is what steers a sprint car. And the warm-up lap of qualifying, my drag link broke and no steering. You can't really slow those things down. They're tanks.
Not at all.
I was on the brakes. I let off the throttle, but you just really can't do too much there. I ramped off the banking, hit a tractor in the pits. I actually landed probably 6 feet from someone's pit area. Thankfully, no one was hurt. But
your
except
neck
me.
was probably destroyed.
Yeah, I was hurt, but nobody else was, thankfully. But yeah, that one really rung my bell. And obviously, since I didn't have the neck restraint, my neck hurt.
Yeah.
And my chin, I think, hit the steering wheel. I don't really know. Yeah. Because I had my eyes closed.
No bueno.
So I'll go on now with mine and make it short. It actually was my 4th race out in the factory QRC kart. I was running for Jimmy, and I was stoked. We just actually came off a win. My 3rd night out, I got my first open win at the Red Bluff Outlaws. And this all is on a vlog. That's what's so great. You can look back. I'll have some footage playing up on the podcast right now. But I was going down the front straightaway, I should say. I was 1 lap down. I didn't know I was a lap down, or I didn't know I was a lap down originally because I had actually my steering column broke, so I had no steering. I pulled into the infield. I actually went a lap or 2 down, and then I finally got it fixed, but no one ever told me that until the end. So I didn't want to just pull off, even though my B main event was over because it was a B6 transferred. But I just kind of wanted to at least finish the race because I didn't want a bad look for QRC by just giving up, you could say. And I was going back and forth on what to do in my head, and finally I just took off. In the poor 3W of Richard Westine, he lane changed because he didn't know I was out there, and I literally ramped over his right rear and flipped 4 or 5 times down the front straightaway and absolutely wore out a house cart. So I wasn't sure if my seat was coming out of the car after the night or not, but thankfully it did it, and we have that great relationship with QRC, and now we are where we're at, and that's just where we started.
And I was actually there and caught that on video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally wore it out for last place.
It was a big wreck.
It was.
It was not a little wreck.
So that's my funny story.
Yeah, that's no bueno. Shaw knows this one for sure. This has been broadcasted. One time I was coming out of turn 2 in a heat race, and I don't remember who it was, but they dropped a motor right in front of me, and I'm coming out too. Yeah, Tyler McCain. And the way I did, same thing Tanner did, left front, right over the right rear, and I hopped, and the way I landed was on my side. And it's on video. My ear touches the tip of my shoulder because I did not have a full containment seat. I only had my Hans for a front impact and then the half. So that's why I woke up the next morning, neck stiff. I'm sore. I can't move. And I was like, that's why from here on out, I'm going to live and die by the full containment seat. So we got the full containment seat for that reason. But as you can see, you'll show a video here. That was probably no bueno for sure.
No good on the neck.
No.
A question here.
Yeah.
Does your neck still hurt to this day?
Yeah. Oh, it does. Yeah, it's not fully recovered. But for the funny, kind of a funny little story here also, remember the fair race they used to do? So before the Red Bluff Outlaws season, they would do a race at the rodeo grounds at Red Bluff, which is kind of right across the way. Well, my dad used Maria Kofer's dad, John Kofer's air gauge to do my tire pressures. And then literally I go out there for 250 hot laps. First corner, we have reverse stagger, and I turn it in there, and there's no banking. It's kind of like silver dollar for carts, it just rolls off. We just tip it up and over, and we're out of the track. For the first race of the season, I'm like, well, this is a great start.
So don't use someone else's air gauge. That might be wrong.
Because it's not going to be the same. So note to self, always wear full containment seat, or always use full containment. Always wear
a head and
neck restraint, and use your own equipment.
And if you're a lap down, you should probably just pull off realistically.
The track,
So, Kyler, before we completely end this interview, first off, thank you. Where can they find Fast 4 Media? I know right now is actually a good time to look into it if you want to tune into the rest of the Red Bluff Outlaws.
Yeah, exactly. The Platinum membership is something we just introduced onto Fast 4 Media. It's a membership that when you have it, you can watch any race in that time period. If you buy a Platinum membership for a month right now
for $30.
Yeah, $30. You cannot beat this. I don't even know. Can you even get in the Red Bluff Outlaws for $30?
No way.
$25 for one
Unless
race.
you jump over the back gate, maybe.
Which probably happens. But $30, you could watch the rest of the races. There's 3 more point races and then 4 days of West Coast Nationals. Yeah. You are stealing my money if you do that. But yeah, it's a really good deal. We did that to make it more affordable. We want coverage to get out there. We want people to watch Outlaw Karts. Only $30. Go ahead and get that. We'll put a link down here in the bio. You could get your membership today.
And a link to all your social medias.
Yeah. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok. You never know what we'll post on there. I'm going to try and follow some trends, and these guys are TikTok legends, so we're going to try and learn from them and maybe get some funny stuff up on there.
Well, that's awesome. I 100% go and recommend you check out Fast Four Media. They support me, and we really like for you guys to support them. Anyway, Kyler, thank you for coming on the show and being in studio. This is going to wrap up episode number 6 here of Off the Track. Yeah. If you guys want, you can listen on Apple Podcasts. You can also listen on Spotify, or hear every single Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. on the YouTube channel for the video version. Anyway, we're going to sign off. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. I was glad to tell my story.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you guys soon.